The ghost writer. I never believed in ghosts until I became one. Not the floating through walls kind. I mean a different type altogether. A ghost writer. The invisible hand behind best-selling memoirs and celebrity tell-alls that everyone reads, but no one attributes to me. For 15 years, I've been the literary equivalent of a session musician, essential to the final product, but ultimately forgettable. Until I wrote the book that changed everything. It started with a phone call on a rainy Tuesday in October. I was in my apartment in Brooklyn, watching water streak down my windows while procrastinating on the deadline for a C-list reality star's inspirational journey. Alex Mercer? The voice on the phone was gravelly, like someone had taken sandpaper to their vocal cords. Speaking, I said, balancing my phone between ear and shoulder while I made coffee. My name is Marcus Wheeler. I need a ghost writer. I almost laughed. Most potential clients didn't get straight to the point like that. Usually, there were layers of agents and publicists, NDAs, and preliminary meetings. I'm pretty booked up at the moment, Mr. Wheeler, but I could recommend $500,000. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering against the kitchen tile. $500,000? My usual fee for a 6-month project was $40,000, and that was for the big jobs. I'm sorry, I stammered. Could you repeat that? $500,000, he said again, emotionless. Half up front, half on completion. You tell no one, not your agent, not your mother, not your therapist. Just you and me. What exactly is this book about, Mr. Wheeler? There was a pause. I could hear him breathing. My confession. 2 days later, I was on a private jet heading to a location I wasn't permitted to know. The contract I'd signed was the most restrictive I'd ever seen. Not that I hesitated. The initial wire transfer of $250,000 into my account had removed any doubts. A driver met me at a small airstrip and took me to what appeared to be a modernist mansion perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the Pacific. Later, I'd learned we were about 30 miles north of Big Sur, California. The house was all glass and concrete, a billionaire's idea of minimalism. A housekeeper led me through a series of rooms that felt more like an art installation than a home, until we reached a study lined with books I'd never heard of in languages I couldn't identify. And there was Marcus Wheeler. He didn't match his voice. I'd expected someone older, harder-edged. Instead, he was maybe 50, trim, with salt and pepper hair, and the kind of tan people get from sailing, not sunbeds. Designer glasses. Expensive watch. A casual outfit that probably cost more than my rent. Alex, he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. Thank you for coming. Hard to say no to your offer. His smile looked practiced. People always say yes to me eventually. Please sit. I sank into a leather chair across from him. So, Mr. Wheeler. Marcus, please. Marcus, you mentioned a confession. I assume this is a memoir. Of sorts. He studied me. What do you know about me, Alex? The truth was nothing. I'd Googled him, of course, but found surprisingly little. Some vague references to venture capital. A few photos at charity events with his wife. A former model 20 years his junior, but nothing substantial. No Wikipedia page. No detailed press coverage. Not much, I admitted. He nodded, seemingly pleased. Good. That makes this easier. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a thumb drive. Everything you need to know is here. Background information. Dates. Names. Places. I usually conduct interviews. Multiple sessions, recorded, transcribed. That won't be necessary. His tone made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. I've written everything down. Your job is to make it readable, compelling. You're the professional. And what exactly am I making compelling? Marcus Wheeler looked at me with eyes that suddenly seemed very cold. The truth about what happened to Flight 2578. My stomach dropped. Everyone knew about Flight 2578. 10 years ago, a commercial airliner disappeared over the Pacific with 237 people on board. No wreckage ever found. No bodies recovered. Just gone, like it had been plucked from the sky. You know what happened to it. Wheeler's expression didn't change. I made it happen, I was given a guest house on the property, a small 3-bedroom with its own infinity pool. The housekeeper, Mrs. Patel, brought meals 3 times a day, but never engaged in conversation. The Wi-Fi worked, but when I tried to Google Marcus Wheeler Flight 2578, the connection mysteriously dropped. Same for any search about the flight. So I focused on the thumb drive. What I found was methodical, detailed, and absolutely horrifying. Marcus Wheeler had started as a defense contractor in the early 2000s, developing tracking systems. His company, Helios Technology, had created software that could theoretically hijack a plane's controls remotely. The military rejected it as too experimental, too dangerous. But Marcus had continued development in secret. Flight 2578 was his test case. His successful test case. The document outlined everything. How he'd infiltrated the airline systems, how he'd overridden the pilot's controls, how he'd redirected the plane to a remote location. And why? The why was what kept me up at night. According to Wheeler, the plane carried a scientist named Eliza Chun, who had developed an algorithm that could predict human behavior with unprecedented accuracy. Not just consumer behavior, everything. Voting patterns, criminal tendencies, revolutionary potential. Wheeler believed this technology, in government hands, would end free will as we know it. So he eliminated it, along with 236 innocent people. He wrote about all of this with the detached precision of someone describing a minor surgical procedure. For 3 days, I didn't leave the guest house. I read. I took notes. I tried not to vomit. On the 4th day, I requested a meeting with Wheeler. Mrs. Patel showed me to the study again. Wheeler was standing by the window, looking out at the ocean. "You've read everything," he said without turning around. "Yes." And I took a deep breath. Why tell the story now? Why confess? He turned to face me. "Because I'm dying, Alex. Brain tumor. Inoperable. 6 months, maybe less. And you want what? Absolution? I want the truth to be known." He walked to his desk and sat down. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But the world should know what governments are capable of, what they're developing. But you killed 237 people to save billions from invisible chains." He removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes. For a moment, he looked genuinely tired. "The algorithm wasn't destroyed, you know. The Chinese government has a version. So does the NSA. They're using it right now, watching us, predicting us, controlling us in ways we don't even recognize." That sounds paranoid. Does it? He smiled thinly. "Check your phone. Look at your personalized recommendations. Notice how the news you see aligns perfectly with what makes you most engaged, most outraged. That's baby steps, Alex. Primitive applications." I shifted uncomfortably. "Why me? Why choose me to write this?" "Your style. Accessible but intelligent. And your circumstances." "What about my circumstances?" "You're alone. No wife since the divorce 3 years ago. No children. Parents deceased. Few close friends. Limited social media presence." He listed these facts like he was reading a grocery list. "You're a ghost already, Alex. Even before I hired you." A chill ran through me. How did he know all this? "I won't write this." The words came out before I could stop them. "I won't help you justify mass murder." Wheeler's expression didn't change. "You signed a contract. Sue me. I wouldn't waste the time I have left on legal proceedings." He leaned forward. "Let me be clear. You will write this book. Because if you don't, things will become very unpleasant for you." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining reality." His voice remained calm. "The money has been transferred to your account. The paper trail exists. If certain information were to reach the FBI, information suggesting you had knowledge of Flight 2578's fate for years, but kept silent for a payout, well, that would be unfortunate." My mouth went dry. "You're framing me." "I prefer to think of it as motivation." Wheeler stood up. "You have 2 months. Make it good." I spent the next week in a state of panic. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. When I did manage to sleep, I dreamed of planes dropping from the sky while I watched helplessly. I considered running. But where would I go? Wheeler clearly had resources I couldn't comprehend. And now there was a money trail connecting us. So I started writing. I told myself I was just doing a first draft, getting the facts down. I could figure out an escape plan later. Maybe I could build in subtle clues that the narrative was false. Maybe I could find a way to expose Wheeler without implicating myself. The work was strangely absorbing. Wheeler's document was cold, clinical. My job was to create the narrative architecture around it, to build a psychological profile that explained how a man could justify such an act. I interviewed him daily now, recording his emotionless descriptions of the technical aspects, pressing him on his motivations. "Did you ever consider," I asked one afternoon, "that Chin might have been using her algorithm for good? To help people?" Wheeler looked at me like I was a particularly slow child. "Power like that is never used for good, not ultimately. Humans can't resist the temptation to control others." "Like you couldn't resist?" A flicker of something, annoyance? Respect, crossed his face. I acted decisively. One trauma to prevent an ongoing atrocity. And the families of the 237 people? What about their ongoing trauma? He was quiet for a moment. Necessary sacrifices. 2 weeks in, Wheeler's health began to deteriorate visibly. The tumor was affecting his right side. His hand trembled. Sometimes he slurred his words. Mrs. Patel had been replaced by a nurse named Michael who managed Wheeler's medications. One night, I was working late in the guest house when Michael knocked on my door. "Mr. Wheeler would like to see you," he said. Urgently. I found Wheeler in his bedroom. The clinical aesthetic of the rest of the house was absent here. The room was almost cozy, warm woods, actual photographs on bedside tables. Wheeler was propped up in bed, looking gray. "Alex," he said, his voice weaker than I'd heard it before. "Thank you for coming. I needed to tell you something." I sat in the chair beside his bed. "I'm listening. There's more to the story." He closed his eyes for a moment, seeming to gather strength. "Flight 2578. It wasn't just about Chun and her algorithm." "What do you mean?" "My wife was on that plane." I stared at him. "Your wife? But I've seen photos of you with your wife. At events." "My second wife." Wheeler's laugh turned into a cough. "Sophia is decorative. Compensated well for her role." "I don't understand. Why would you?" "Eliza Chen wasn't just a scientist, Alex. Before that, she was Margaret Wheeler. My wife. The love of my life." His eyes had taken on a feverish shine. "She was brilliant. Too brilliant. When she discovered what the algorithm could really do, she wanted to destroy it. But her partners, government partners, wouldn't allow that." I struggled to process this new information. "So you killed her? To protect her work? To protect her legacy?" Wheeler's hand trembled as he reached for a glass of water. "They were going to use her creation to enslave humanity, and credit her for it. I couldn't let that happen." Jesus Christ. I stood up, suddenly needing distance from this man. "You're insane." "I'm practical," he wheezed. She would have understood. Eventually. I backed toward the door. I need some air." Wheeler nodded weakly. "The book, Alex. Focus on the book." That night, I couldn't sleep. Wheeler's revelation had changed everything. This wasn't just about a tech billionaire's God complex. This was about obsession, possession, a twisted love that had ended in mass murder. I paced the guest house, fighting waves of nausea. I needed to get out of here. Needed to tell someone what I knew. But who would believe me? And even if they did, Wheeler's threat loomed large. I was compromised already. Around 3 a.m., I heard a sound outside. Footsteps on the path to the guest house. I tensed, expecting Michael with some new summons from Wheeler. Instead, there was a soft knock and a woman's voice. "Mr. Mercer? Can we talk?" I opened the door to find a woman in her late 30s, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore the kind of nondescript business casual outfit that screams federal agent. "Who are you?" I asked, not opening the door fully. She held up a badge. "FBI. Special Agent Diana Reeves." "May I come in?" "It's about Marcus Wheeler." I hesitated. This could be a trap. Some test Wheeler had arranged. How did you get past security? There's only one guard on the property, and he's currently enjoying a medically induced nap. She glanced over her shoulder. I don't have much time, Mr. Mercer. Please. I stepped aside. Agent Reeves entered, quickly scanning the room before turning to me. We know why you're here, she said without preamble. We know what Wheeler has asked you to write. My stomach dropped. How? We've been monitoring Wheeler for years. After his first wife's death on Flight 2578, his behavior raised flags. Large cash withdrawals, unusual travel patterns, communications with known extremist groups. But we could never prove anything. So you know about the plane? What he claims he did. Agent Reeves studied me carefully. What exactly has he told you? I gave her the condensed version, the remote hijacking technology, the algorithm, the deliberate downing of Flight 2578. With each detail, her expression grew grimmer. When I finished, she sat down heavily on my couch. Some of that matches our intelligence. Some of it doesn't. What doesn't match? Wheeler didn't have the technical capability to bring down that plane. His company had prototypes, yes, but nothing operational. She leaned forward. And Eliza Chun, Margaret Wheeler, wasn't developing a predictive algorithm. She was investigating her husband's company for fraud. I blinked, trying to process this. So Wheeler is lying. Not entirely. Flight 2578 was indeed sabotaged, but not by some remote hijacking system. Agent Reeves met my eyes. By a bomb. Conventional. Untraceable. And we believe Wheeler paid for it. Why are you telling me this? Because we need your help. Wheeler is dying. We know about the tumor. This book he's commissioning is his confession, but it's also his attempt to rewrite history, to cast himself as some misunderstood hero battling a dystopian future. And what do you want from me? Keep writing the book, just as he asks. But she pulled a small device from her pocket. It looked like a thumb drive, nearly identical to the one Wheeler had given me. When you're done, give him this instead of your manuscript. It contains a slightly modified version of his story. Modified how? Just enough to lead us to evidence we need. Locations, names of accomplices, the real story of Flight 2578. I stared at the device in her hand. And if I refuse, then you remain complicit in Wheeler's attempt to glorify what was, essentially, an act of domestic terrorism. Her voice hardened, and we'll be having a very different conversation about your level of involvement. Another threat. Different source, same implication. I had no choice. I took the drive. Over the next month, I lived a double life. During the day, I interviewed Wheeler, crafting his narrative of technological terrorism and noble sacrifice. At night, I spoke with Agent Reeves through an encrypted messaging app, telling her everything Wheeler revealed. Wheeler's health continued to decline. Some days he could barely speak. On others, he seemed almost normal, energized by the telling of his story. I found myself in the twisted position of hoping he'd live long enough to see the book completed. As I wrote, something strange happened. I began to understand Wheeler. Not sympathize. I couldn't forgive the deaths of 237 people, but understand the architecture of his logic, the way his mind worked. He genuinely believed he had saved the world from a terrible fate, in his own way. He loved his wife so much that he'd rather kill her than see her work corrupted. It was the logic of a madman, but there was a consistency to it that I could capture on the page. The book took shape. I called it Necessary Dissent. Wheeler approved the title with a grim smile. It was, I had to admit, some of my best work. The pacing was tight. The technical details, terrifying. Wheeler's psychological journey, compelling despite its horrific conclusion. But I included the subtle changes Agent Reeves had requested. References to a warehouse in Oakland where the hijacking system had supposedly been assembled. Mentions of a programmer named Chun, no relation to Eliza, who had helped write the code. Small breadcrumbs that would, according to Reeves, help the FBI build their case. 2 months after I arrived, almost to the day, I finished the manuscript. Wheeler was now confined to bed, his right side almost completely paralyzed. The tumor was winning. It's done. I told him, sitting beside his bed. Do you want me to read it to you? He shook his head slightly. I trust your work, Alex. I just need to know, did you make me a monster? The question caught me off guard. I made you human, I said finally. Complex, troubled, convinced of your own righteousness. But not a monster. The readers will decide that for themselves. This seemed to satisfy him. The full payment will be transferred today. Mrs. Patel has your return flight information. The book, publish it 1 month after my death. Not before. I understand. Wheeler closed his eyes. You know, Alex, of all the ghost writers I interviewed, you were the only one who asked why. The others just saw the money. I wish I hadn't asked, I said honestly. I wish I didn't know any of this. Knowledge is a burden, Wheeler murmured, already drifting towards sleep. But ignorance is a prison. I left the thumb drive, Reeves' version, on his bedside table. My flight back to New York was scheduled for the following morning. I spent my last night in the guest house packing and deleting files. I messaged Agent Reeves. It's done. Left the drive with him. Her reply came quickly. Good. We'll be in touch soon with next steps. Around midnight, I heard shouting from the main house. I stepped outside to see lights on, people moving. Michael, the nurse, was running toward a car. Something was wrong. I hurried to the main house, finding the door unlocked. Inside, the clinical quiet had been replaced by urgent activity. 2 paramedics were in Wheeler's bedroom, working over his still form. A third was on the phone. What happened? I asked Michael, who stood in the doorway looking shell-shocked. Seizure, he said. Massive. Brain stem failure. I watched as the paramedics stopped CPR. One looked at his watch, saying something about time of death. Marcus Wheeler was gone, and I felt nothing. No relief. No closure. Just emptiness. As the medical team packed up their equipment, I noticed something. The thumb drive was missing from the bedside table. Michael, I said quietly. Did Mr. Wheeler have visitors today? After I left. The nurse shook his head. No one. He slept most of the afternoon. And the thumb drive that was here? Did you see it? What thumb drive? I returned to New York the next day, my mind racing. The thumb drive was gone. Had Wheeler discovered the switch? Had someone else taken it? The second payment hit my account as promised, $250,000. I should have felt set, financially secure for at least a couple of years. Instead, I felt dirty, tainted by association with Wheeler's crime. 3 days after my return, I received a text from an unknown number. We need to meet. The thumb drive is compromised. Dr. Agent Reeves. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Park Slope. I arrived early, found a table in the back. Reeves showed up 20 minutes late, looking harried. We have a problem, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. The drive you left with Wheeler, it's gone. I know. I noticed right before he died. Did he access it? Did he know you'd switched it? I shook my head. I don't think so. He was too weak. Reeves ran a hand through her hair. Someone has it. Someone who doesn't want us to find it. We've searched the house, his office, his personal devices. Could it have been Michael? The nurse. We've questioned him. He doesn't know anything. She leaned forward. Wheeler must have told someone else about the book. Someone who knows what really happened to Flight 2578. What do you need from me? The original manuscript. Your version. It may contain information we can use. I hesitated. I deleted everything after I gave Wheeler the drive. It was all on his personal laptop. Everything. Reeves looked skeptical. You didn't keep a copy for yourself? Most writers do. Not of this. I wanted it gone. Reeves sat back, studying me. You're lying, Alex. My pulse quickened. Excuse me. I think you kept a copy. I think you're more involved than you're admitting. Her voice had taken on a harder edge. Maybe Wheeler told you where the drive was hidden. Maybe you have it. That's ridiculous. Why would I? $500,000 is a lot of motivation. I stared at her. Something wasn't right. Agent Reeves had been almost friendly before, professional but warm. This woman across from me now seemed like a different person. Colder, more aggressive. And then it hit me. "Who are you?" I asked quietly. She blinked. "What? You're not Diana Reeves. Not the same one who came to the guest house." A slight smile played at her lips. "Mr. Mercer, you're under a lot of stress." The woman who visited me had a small scar on her jawline. Right side. "You don't have that." The smile vanished. The woman who wasn't Diana Reeves stood up. "This meeting is over." "Who do you work for?" I pressed. "Who sent you?" She leaned down, her face inches from mine. "Be very careful, Alex. Some questions are dangerous to ask." And then she was gone, moving quickly through the coffee shop and out the door. I sat there, heart pounding. What the hell was happening? That night, my apartment was broken into. I returned from a walk to find the door ajar, lights on that I'd left off. Nothing obvious was missing. Not my laptop, not my phone, not the small amount of cash I kept in a drawer. They were looking for the manuscript. But I'd been smarter than that. The only copy that existed was on a cloud drive, encrypted, accessible only with a password that I kept in my head. I grabbed a few essentials and checked into a hotel. Then I called the real FBI, asked for Special Agent Diana Reeves. "There's no agent by that name," the operator told me. "Can you connect me with whoever is handling the Marcus Wheeler investigation?" "Sir, I don't have any information about a Marcus Wheeler investigation." I hung up, increasingly paranoid. Had Wheeler been telling the truth all along? Was there some government conspiracy to suppress information about Flight 2578? I needed answers, and I knew there was only one place to get them: the manuscript. I hadn't read it since finishing it. Now, in my hotel room, I opened the file and began to read. The story was as I remembered it: Wheeler's company, the hijacking technology, his wife's algorithm, the decision to bring down Flight 2578. But as I read my own words, something struck me as odd. Names, dates, places. They didn't match my memories of what Wheeler had told me. According to the manuscript, Wheeler had developed the hijacking technology in 2008, not 2006. His wife had completed the algorithm in 2013, not 2012. The warehouse where the system was tested was in San Diego, not Oakland. These weren't mistakes I would have made. These were deliberate changes. And then I realized Wheeler had edited the manuscript before I arrived. He'd changed key details, dates that could be verified, locations that could be checked. He'd created a fiction within a fiction. But why? I read further, looking for patterns in the changes. Most were minor, a month here, a name there. But they added up to something significant, a complete misdirection about the timeline of Wheeler's activities. And then I found it, buried in a paragraph about Wheeler's early work. The prototype was successful beyond our expectations. On October 11th, 2010, we demonstrated the capability by temporarily taking control of a small private jet. Flight path adjusted by 3 degrees for approximately 4 minutes before returning control to the pilots. Neither pilot was aware of the intervention. October 11th, 2010. I cross-referenced with the original document Wheeler had given me. The date wasn't there. I had added it based on one of our interviews. Wheeler had mentioned it casually, so casually I almost missed its significance. October 11th, 2010. 3 years before Flight 2578 disappeared. I grabbed my phone, searched Private Jet Incident October 11th, 2010. Nothing relevant. I refined the search. Private Jet Control Malfunction October 11th, 2010. A single result. A small news item about a private jet belonging to Congressman William Morris experiencing unusual navigation system behavior during a flight from D.C. to Boston. Congressman Morris. I searched his name. He had led the House Intelligence Committee from 2009 to 2014. And in 2013, he had spearheaded a classified project on predictive algorithms for national security. The pieces started to fit together. Wheeler hadn't hijacked Flight 2578 to prevent his wife's algorithm from falling into government hands. He'd hijacked it because the government, specifically Morris's committee, had already taken her work and was developing it. The plane wasn't the test. It was the revenge. I spent the next week digging deeper, Morris had died in 2018. Heart attack, supposedly. 3 other members of his committee had died under various circumstances. Car accident, suicide, home invasion. Wheeler hadn't been targeting just the algorithm. He'd been systematically eliminating everyone involved with it. And now I held the only copy of his true confession. I needed protection. Real protection. I contacted a journalist I'd worked with before, Sasha Kim at the Washington Post. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to pique her interest. I have information about Flight 2578, I said, and about a series of deaths connected to a classified intelligence project. We agreed to meet at her office the following day. I never made it there. As I left my hotel, a black SUV pulled up beside me. 2 men in suits stepped out. Mr. Mercer, one said, "We need you to come with us." "Who are you?" The man showed me ID. "Department of Homeland Security." "Am I under arrest?" "No, sir. But we need to debrief you regarding Marcus Wheeler and the document you've been working on." I didn't have much choice. I went with them. They took me to a nondescript office building in Midtown, through security checkpoints, into an elevator that required keycard access, and finally into a conference room where a woman was waiting. She was in her 60s, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone used to giving orders and having them obeyed immediately. "Mr. Mercer," she said, not offering her name. "Please sit down." I did. "You've created quite a problem for us," she continued. "Wheeler's little project was supposed to die with him. Now we have you running around with a manuscript full of sensitive information." "Who are you?" I asked for what felt like the 100th time that week. "Someone who cleans up messes." She folded her hands on the table. "Like the mess Wheeler made. Like the mess you're about to make by talking to the Washington Post." My blood went cold. They were monitoring me. "Flight 2578, I said. "Wheeler brought it down. Because of the algorithm. Because of what Congressman Morris was doing with it." The woman's expression didn't change. "Wheeler was mentally ill, Mr. Mercer. A paranoid schizophrenic with delusions of grandeur. He didn't bring down any plane. He confessed to me. He confessed to many things over the years. To doctors, to therapists. His brain tumor only exacerbated his condition." "You're lying," she sighed. "What do you think is more likely? That a defense contractor developed secret technology to hijack commercial aircraft, used it to commit mass murder, and the government covered it up? Or that a dying man with a history of mental illness hired a writer to validate his delusions?" Put that way, it did sound absurd, but I'd seen the evidence. Hadn't I? "The thumb drive," I said. "Wheeler's document. Full of fabrications. Technology that doesn't exist. Conspiracies that never happened." "And the woman claiming to be FBI? Agent Reeves?" The silver-haired woman shrugged. "Possibly one of Wheeler's associates. He wasn't without resources." I felt dizzy. Was it possible? Had I been drawn into an elaborate fantasy constructed by a madman? "What do you want from me?" I finally asked. "The manuscript. All copies. And your silence. And if I refuse, then we'll be forced to discredit you publicly. We have evidence of financial irregularities in your accounts, large deposits from offshore sources, communications with known conspiracy theorists, mental health records indicating a history of paranoid tendencies." I stared at her. "Those are all lies." "Of course they are. But they're very convincing lies, backed by very official-looking documentation." She smiled without warmth. "No one will believe your story about Wheeler. They'll just see another unstable writer who lost touch with reality." I thought about my options. I could fight, go to the press, publish the manuscript, tell my story. But against the resources this woman represented, I'd be destroyed. "If I give you what you want," I said slowly, "what guarantee do I have that you'll leave me alone?" "You have my word." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a flash drive. "This contains a new manuscript, a novel, inspired by your time with Wheeler. Fiction, clearly labeled as such. Publish this instead. You'll still get attention, still make money, just without the inconvenience of being discredited and possibly prosecuted." I took the drive. "That's it. I publish this, and you disappear from my life. That's it. She stood up. Don't make the wrong choice, Mr. Mercer. Some stories aren't meant to be told. I published the novel, The Ghost Writer, by Alex Mercer, hit shelves 6 months after my meeting with the silver-haired woman. It was marketed as a thriller inspired by real events, the story of a ghost writer hired by a dying billionaire who claims responsibility for a famous disaster. The reviews were good. Sales were strong. I made more money than I ever had from my ghost writing jobs. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd failed, that I'd allowed myself to be silenced. The silver-haired woman kept her word. No one discredited me. No one threatened me. The mysterious Agent Reeves never reappeared. And then, a year after publication, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a thumb drive, not Wheeler's, not the government's, but a new one. And a note. Some stories need to be told, just not all at once. M. Margaret Wheeler? Marcus Wheeler? Someone else entirely? I plugged in the drive. It contained a single file, a video. Dashcam footage from a car. Date stamped October 11th, 2010. I watched as the car approached a private airfield. A small jet was taking off. And then, impossibly, the jet veered, just slightly, to the right. The change was subtle, but unmistakable. After about 30 seconds, it corrected course and continued normally. The video ended. A text document opened automatically. The technology exists. Wheeler told the truth about that much. But the rest of the story is more complicated than either of you knew. When you're ready for the next chapter, look where it all began. Flight 2578's original flight plan had a fuel stop that was removed 2 hours before takeoff. Find out why. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I did what any writer would do. I started a new document and began to write the real story. The end.